What are the worst books I read in 2024? I'm going to roast the worst that I encountered this year. It's time to be malevolent. Hello, welcome to my channel. Another bibliophile reads. It is just about the end of the year, and I am making my lists of the worst books and the best books that I read in 2024, and this is going to be the first of 4 videos. This will be the worst books I read in 2024. I will then continue with the best fiction books I read in 2024, the best nonfiction, and then ended up with the best rereads of 2024. Now, when I say these are the worst books that I read in 2024, it is a matter of opinion. Most of the time, there are some books on this list that are on Friends videos. The best of 2024, I think we can still be friends and disagree about what makes a good book, because everyone, when they're reading, has different tastes and different values, and they will find things that are either good or bad in a book. So just because I list this as my worst book of the year does not mean that it cannot be your best book of the year. We can have differing opinions, and most of us will remain friends. Also, these are books that I read in 2024. Mostly, there are not a lot of books published in 2024 because, generally speaking, I'm not a new release reader. Except for the last 2 books on this list, they are in no particular order. I have tried to group them thematically because some themes don't turn out too well in my opinion, so you'll see them lumped together. And I will have 12 plus 1 bonus short story worst books of 2024. I am going to start off with the worst extreme horror books that I read in 2024. Now, in order to get started on this list, I need to tell you a little bit about a short story published in Again Dangerous Visions, edited by Harlan Ellison in 1972. The short story is Piers Anthony. He is a well-known science fiction author who often pushes his subjects out to the edge. In this short story, a place called Earth Prime has developed a technology that allows them to wander the multiverses. This is where there are multiple universes, and sometimes there is a minor change in history. Sometimes there is a major change in history. Sometimes there is no history at all, and you go to a dead world. And there is a character whose job it is to explore these multiverses and seeing if it's suitable for trade in Earth Prime, because Earth Prime does not want to trade with questionable worlds. This narrator arrives in a world, and it's a farming community. And he walks into a barn, and he's immediately hired as a farmhand to milk the cows. In this alternate world, there are no bovine cows, there are human cows. Beautiful, naked women with large breasts filled with milk. I'm only going to go there with the story, other to say that Piers Anthony does have a sense of morality. There is a sense that there is something very seriously wrong in this alternative universe. If you like science fiction stories, really check this story out. Okay, I had to tell you about that because there is a novella called Bowery by Matthew Vaughn. It is set in our world, and in this world, there is a place where you can have sexual encounters with women who are treated like cows. And there is a mother cow, which is essentially a human, just made for breeding other human cows. It is an erotic short story, or I should say, it's attempting to be an erotic short story. I did not find it very erotic myself. Having sexual intercourse is with let's just say women who treated like cows. And it gets kind of graphic and kind of disgusting. So, not a book that I appreciated, and I appreciated even less knowing that he's stealing sort of ideas from the great Piers Anthony, who wrote In the Barn. There is also a bonus short story that goes along with this. It is called Milked on the Ranch by X Callisto. X Callisto is listed on Amazon as being a young, beautiful woman. I will show you her picture. I doubt that is actually the author's picture. I imagine the real author is an incel living in his mother's basement, trying to write an erotic short story, again about human women being treated like cows and milking them while having sex with them. Not an appealing topic to me. I did not find it erotic at all. Now, maybe that's just my sexual preferences. But if you go back to the short story In the Barn, Piers Anthony does raise that sexual tension because there is the man from a multiverse experiencing beautiful naked women with large breasts. So there is some sort of sexual attraction going on in that story, but in that story, it's wrong. And these short stories, or a short story and novella, it's listed as something really exciting. Not for me at all. Zola, an extreme horror novel with cheese by D.E. McCluskey. This is a story of a man or a child born into a very brutal family, and he's basically raised to kill people and eat people. And it just so happens that his name is Gordon Zola. Yes, that is a very bad pun. This story is extremely graphic in violence and sex, and it's one of those cases where the author, I think, is just trying to be disgusting for the sake of being disgusting and not putting any meaningful story into the story or its characters. It's just, how gross can I get? And I don't give a whole lot of bonuses for getting gross. There are some very good examples of extreme horror where the author does get down and dirty with the graphic, nasty details, but it works within the story. Not so with Zola. No One Rides for Free, an extreme novella by Judith Sonnet. This is again an example of extreme horror. In the afterword, the author described her ordeal trying to write this novella within 10 days. I'm not sure if it's true, but there used to be a 10-day novel writing contest back in the 90s because apparently Voltaire wrote his very famous novella Candide within 10 days. This author did not mention Candide or Voltaire in her afterwards. Maybe she did not know about that old contest. But like Zola, she was trying to be disgusting just for the sake of disgusting and seeing how graphic she can get and what sort of sexual situations she can put her characters into. It starts off with a 40-ish mother delivering or trying to deliver her 2 college-age children out in New Mexico or somewhere like that, and they get sidetracked by a maniac. Again, no character development, just gore and sex. An extreme disappointment. The Amazonian Uteroboscis, an erotic Lovecraftian splatterpunk novel by B.L. Overman. In this story, a graduate student, a female, is gone to the Amazon to study for her dissertation. And while in the Amazon River, she encounters a parasite that swims up her girly parts and lodges itself in her uterus. Now, this parasite has the ability to control her sexual desires, and she starts getting very, very sexually aroused with murder. Like the previous extreme horror novels in this list, it's just gore for gore's sake, sex for sex's sake, and the erotic encounters really aren't all that erotic. I have read some erotic stories, especially the adult westerns, that are kind of erotic. Their authors understand human sexuality and what it means to stoke up desire. The Amazon Uteroboscis does not stoke up desire. At least it didn't in me. And that's why it gets on this list of the worst books of 2024. The next book is one that I would not normally have read on my own, but I was a judge for the BookTube Prize nonfiction, and I got assigned to read Invitation to a Banquet, the story of Chinese food by Fuchsia Dunlop. She is a British woman who is an expert in Chinese cooking, and she has visited China on numerous occasions and knows how to cook Chinese food, not the Chinese American food that most of us are familiar with. Now, I said it's not a book I would normally pick up because I am not a foodie. Descriptions of food and how they are prepared just don't interest me. There were parts of this book about Chinese culture and how they developed their food, which was kind of interesting in parts. But the author had this really unpleasant style of describing all these different foods as delicious. Every chapter she described a Chinese dish and said, oh, it was delicious. All the foods that she made were delicious. And some of the dishes she described are things that I would not eat. I would not eat mostly because I'm not a foodie and I do not like to experiment with different types of food. And the Chinese culture like to eat things that most Americans and maybe most British don't normally eat. The parts of the cow or the animal that we would normally throw away as rubbish. Quite a delicious treat for the Chinese. And that's why I did not like it. I know some people on the BookTube judges ranked this book highly. It did pass from the first round to the second round. So I am at least on the outside saying that it was a bad book. Some people like this. But if I ever met this author, if she had a restaurant, I would not eat her Chinese cooking. I'm going to get a lot of heat for the next book because it does appear on numerous people's best of books in 2024, and that is Blackouts by Justin Torres. It is an experimental novel of sorts. There is a main narrative about a gay man taking care of another gay man who's rather critically ill. The exact nature of their relationship is left a little murky, but the sick man is trying to edit a manuscript that was done by one of his aunts or mothers or something like that about gay culture and medicine. I may have that just a little bit long. I read it a couple of months ago, but large portions of this text are blacked out that were deemed unsuitable for the times. And the author, Justin Torres, was trying very hard to make a point about the treatment of gay people in modern culture. And yes, they are treated quite abominably. I can understand that. But to me, it was like being hit on the head to say, look at this, look how bad they were treated. Isn't that terrible? And when you have an agenda in a book, the agenda can take over and ruin the story. That is what happened to me in Blackouts. I think many people enjoyed this book because they are virtue readers. They want to understand the importance of gay culture and how badly it is treated, and they feel better about themselves when they say they can understand it. Not being part of the gay culture, I can come out and say, I will never understand the horrible treatment they go through, even reading about it. Earlier this year, Utah made a list of banned books that were deemed unacceptable for school libraries. And I'm on a mission with some other people to read banned books. And I picked this one out on my own. It's not part of the banned book club yet, and it was Blankets by Craig Thompson. It is a graphic memoir of the author's time growing up when he was part of a Christian culture, and he is sent off to a Christian summer camp where he meets the love of his life as a teenager. And I say WUV, W-U-V, to be just a little ironic. And it's too much about teenageness and how they view love and coming as an adult. It just did not gel with me. Parts of the book could have been interesting, especially his time as he started the book as a faithful Christian and how he loses that faith in his religion. That part could have been very interesting. I just did not enjoy the love story of his meeting up with this fantastic other teenage girl and how they come together and eventually fall apart. Teenage romance just is not my thing. The next three books I also read for the Book 2 prize fiction category. And it is kind of odd that 3 out of the 6 books in that fiction category I was assigned made it to the worst of 2024. I think I got a bad lot for at least me. And the first one is The Queen of Dirt Island by Donald Ryan. This is the story of a farming family out in Ireland and the grandmother essentially helping to raise the grandchildren. The mother is also there, but it is a family relationship story and how they're trying to preserve this farm. And when I talk about family relationship stories, that's again something that just isn't in my wheelhouse. I really don't care much about how families take care of each other and love each other and grow as a family. How to Say Babylon by Sophia Sinclair, a memoir of the author's time growing up in Jamaica and learning how to become a poet. It is also the story of her family growing up with a rather strict Rastafarian father. Now, I am not very familiar with the Rastafarian religion. The tidbits that I got out of this memoir on that stream was rather interesting, but the author really was not interested in the Rastafarian religion and teaching us uneducated people more about it. It was the treatment of her father. Her father was rather brutal and domineering. He said the man in the family makes the rules and everyone else must obey. Reading How to Say Babylon reminded me a lot of Educated by Tara Westover. Tara Westover wrote her memoir about growing up under a strict and domineering Mormon father. And it seems it does not matter what religion the father is, Rastafarian or Mormon, that's the idea that the father rules, the father makes the choices, and everyone else in the family must obey. But the parts that I did not like about these two memoirs were the relationship between the author and her father, and the family relationships between them and how they grow. I guess you're getting the point that I just don't like family relationship stories. No big surprise if you know the fiction group I judged for the BookTube prize that my third entry for that will be Loved and Missed by Susie Boyt. This is the story of a grandmother raising her granddaughter. The grandmother must take control of the granddaughter because the mother is a heroin addict and unable to care for her offspring. So the grandmother takes over, essentially just steals the granddaughter and takes control. Now, this again is a family relationship novel, and as I said, it's just not a subject that works for me. This novel is a favorite of a BookTube friend, so some people really do like this book, but it's not one that worked for me. The writing is very well done, but I would have focused more on other things in this novel than the grandmother and the granddaughter. That's just me. The Art of Asking Your Boss for a Raise by Georges Perec, translated from the French. Georges Perec is a very experimental writer. He wrote a book called A Void in English, which is a lipogram, and in this lipogram you are not allowed to use the letter E. He wrote a different short story where the only vowel that he used was the letter E. So that novel and that short story, highly experimental, kind of out on the edges. Stories don't always make a whole lot of sense because the E in the French language is the most popular vowel, as it is in English. So the English translations of those two books are very strange, and this may even be equally as strange. This is a sort of novelization, a short storyification of a flowchart. Now, you all know what flowcharts are. Flowcharts give you examples saying, if you do A, go down this path, you will be given a choice A, B, C, maybe D. And then the flowchart goes around and kind of circles around. So in this flowchart is how to ask your boss for a raise. So one of the things it might be is your boss in the office? Go down this path. If he's not in the office, go to the other path, return to your seat. If your boss is there, there's another question. Is your boss in a good mood? If he's not in a good mood, don't ask for a raise. If he is in a good mood, go down the other path, and so forth and so forth and so forth, until you can finally ask your boss for a raise. This book was incredibly dull. It is an exercise of what can be done with writing. It is not good writing in and of itself. I guess it's a way to show off your writing chops, what you can do with writing, but it was an experiment. And honestly, that experiment just should have been shelved. Finally is the last book on this list. This is a book that I really should never have picked up. I knew I was going to dislike this book from the get-go. It is Unhumans, The Secret History of Communist Revolutions and How to Crush Them by Jack Probisek. This is hard right-wing propaganda writing. It is on the surface about how evil communist revolutions are and the destruction that they can enforce upon humanity, how there is a secret communist plot in the United States. The secret communist plot is not part of the Communist Party, because the Communist Party of America, as the author says, is a joke of a political organization. No, there is a secret communist organization that is not talked about in the media because it's secret, and they have devastatingly evil plans for us liberal Americans. Or I should not just say us liberal Americans, for all Americans. They want to control us completely. So in this book, the author goes through some scenarios in history about the evil communist plots that actually tried to exist in the past. I am not an expert in communist revolutionary history, but I get the idea, just on my surface level education, that this author gets it all wrong. His stats are wrong. His history is wrong. His theories are wrong. I did sort of check up on one of his claims about how many African Americans are actually arrested. He says African Americans are not arrested in any more statistical likelihood than Caucasian Americans. Yeah, right. I don't believe that for one moment. I honestly had to skim most of this book because his analysis of history was just crushingly dull and, to my opinion, just crushingly wrong. Also, inherent in the title is his use of the word unhumans. That is what he calls the liberal folk in this country. We are not humans. We are unhuman because we want to destroy his precious freedoms. What exactly those precious freedoms are a little vague in this book, but it's the whole idea that he, the right wing, the Republicans, are the humans that are out to make life good and precious for everyone. And there are these unhumans out there wanting to destroy everything and make this an evil communist country. This book is so bad, I can't even call it trash or garbage, because there's lots of good trash and garbage you can read. This book is just putrid rubbish. Okay, those are the worst books that I read in 2024. Some of them are honestly bad. The extreme horror books, I think, are just bad books, poorly written. Unhumans, as I said, absolute rubbish. There's a lot in between those two, which are honestly can be debatable. They will be favorite books by some people, and we'll just go with that. People have different opinions about books. Sometimes it will be a favorite book. Sometimes it will be a worst book. We're all here on BookTube to discuss those issues, and you might have to make the judgment for yourself about what is good and what is bad and what is worst. Thank you for watching, and keep on reading.